So let us bring in Anthony, pronouns he, him, from Virginia. He's going to be talking about intelligent design is not God of the gaps, inference to the best explanation instead. So, Anthony, are you hearing us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okie doke, yes.
Is the audio good? Because I've had audio problems in the past. Is it crackling or anything? Or?
Yeah, it's crackling a little bit, but I think we're okay for the most part.
A little bit. All right, tell me if it gets too bad. Yeah, so like you said, I've heard many atheists, skeptics, what have you, make the argument that intelligent design is a sophisticated God of the gaps argument. But I want to suggest that actually that is incorrect. It is an inference to the best explanation. Okay, I wanted to make that argument.
All right. Okay, so that's the argument you want to make. So let's just make sure, though, that we're on the same page. You're going to be comparing that to evolution by natural selection, along with the other mechanisms of genetic drifts, sexual selection, etc., right?
Right.
And before we even hop into intelligent design, another big part of evolution is common descent. So are you going to say that there's intelligent design and common descent, or are you going to see the two as opposed? We just want to see where you want to go with this.
I'm coming at it more from like a special creation side of things, that animals are not related by common descent beyond like maybe the genus level or species.
And okay, so basically all creatures within the genus level can be related and have common descent, but once you go beyond that, then you don't think we can ascribe common descent.
Correct.
Why?
For a number of reasons. And again, I didn't want to make that specific argument, but I believe that the genetic code prevents mutations beyond a certain limit. At some point, it becomes too degenerative. But I think genetic mutations can create diversity within a population, and there can be speciation events, but it basically can't progress beyond a certain point because of the gene regulatory networks and the development of the organism from a zygote to a fully developed organism.
I feel like you lost me here. Let's just step back to why is it that you think that they can't progress beyond speciation?
Yeah, because there are limitations to. It's like if you think about the genetic code as kind of like a computer program. Like if you made a couple.
Not. I mean, it's not an analogy, but it simplifies it so much that you cannot compare them at a level that we would need in a debate. It's something that you'd say to like a 6-year-old to explain super basically how it works. But okay, so go on. You were saying
Yeah, there are differences between the genetic code and a computer program, obviously, but it's essentially the same idea. Where you have
all right, go ahead.
The genetic code codes for specific sequences of, among other things, of amino acids and protein chains and things like that. And essentially, you can make minor modifications to it, just like you can a computer code. But the more you make, the more it degenerates the code, and at some point, it breaks down to the point where the original program is no longer functional. So that's what we see happen. That's actually what we see happening in nature.
Here's the thing, though. That assumes original functionality. And honestly, that's assuming the premise that you want to conclude with.
Well, they do have functions, so we can't deny that.
But when you say original function, that's assuming that there's actually like something that everything was like made for, which is basically sneaking in the designer right at the beginning of your argument, which you're trying to actually get to.
Well, that is kind of what we observe, is that when you're looking at the various proteins and the organs and things like that, they do have a function that it looks like they are designed for, and there's no reason to think otherwise. So why would we think
I think-
that? Why would we
Alright,
think
I
the
think
eye
that-
has anything? Yeah.
Go ahead. You go.
Why would we look at the eye and say its function isn't to see? You know,
I think
'Cause it
that
is.
what he's saying, correct me if I'm wrong here, is that there's like you are implying that there is an overall function to begin with. Like from the start, you're assuming that we had to have started here with this. And I don't like using the computer code analogy because it does not stand up when we're talking about this. I was a programmer for 6 years. I'm not a biologist, though. Anyway, I think the point is that computer code, if we follow that analogy, starts with like a whole, a million line banking software, and these pieces do this and those pieces do that and everything else. And you are tweaking and changing little parts of it to kind of follow the analogy that you're presenting here. But evolution didn't really work that way. We started from nothing and built up little by little by little, and each subsequent change changed the way that the entire system functioned. The changes that were not beneficial, those lines died off. The ones that were beneficial, those lines continued to reproduce. I don't understand how you accept speciation, but can't accept that it can take an additional step and an additional step and an additional with time. I mean, how old do you think the Earth is? You think that over like 2 million years, this doesn't happen, or?
Yeah, actually, I've seen arguments in mathematics suggesting that even if the Earth was trillions of years old, that we would never get the kind of genetic diversity that we see on Earth today. So
Well,
billions of years.
Those arguments are made, but there's almost like a law of the universe that if a creationist makes a probability argument, it's wrong.
Well, it's basic math, so it doesn't matter if it's a creationist.
And if they do the basic math
or
wrong, that is basically wrong. It's always the thing: garbage in, garbage out. Doesn't matter how simple or complex the math is. If the premises going into it are wrong, the conclusion cannot be trusted.
Yeah, and that's correct. I guess I would just say, based on the arguments I've seen, I haven't seen a valid refutation of what they're saying. I'd be willing to listen to an argument. I haven't. I mean, I've looked at I think that a lot of evolutionists are ignoring, for the most part, or kind of straw manning what is actually being argued.
Okay, so let me ask you then. Let's kind of break this down into like a more manageable system. You're saying that you've heard arguments about this. Let's break it down into a syllogism. Can you give me your premises and the conclusion that you reached based on those premises? I assume the conclusion is intelligent design is real, or let me simplify. Let's say the conclusion is evolution does not work beyond simple speciation, like one degree of speciation, I suppose. How do you get there? Let's take one step at a time. What are your premises to get there?
All right. So let's start with step one. You start now. I know according to evolution, it didn't start this way, but as we observe it now, let's just say you have a perfectly functional genome. Okay. And let's say it mutates by.
All right.
Yeah. And let's say it mutates by, let's just throw a number out there, 1%. Okay. And so that creates we're just using numbers here. So that creates a 1% different animal organism, whatever have you, and it creates a new population. Okay. Let's just say that was a speciation event. All right. So you have the original perfect genome, and then you have the slightly mutated 99% similar genome.
All right.
The problem is once you get, let's just say, past let's say 98% of what the original mutations compared to what the original genome sequence was, the organisms are no longer viable. Okay. So
All right, so that's your
you can
So
only
here's the
mutate
thing,
within.
that's not, we can actually know instantly that's impossible, because if you're saying that's not viable, then that means that life should not be possible except for things within 1 or 2% of species that we know. And here's the thing, we're like only a couple percent different from chimps. And I think we can agree chimps exist. They're not degenerate creatures. They are doing just fine, but they're just a few percent different from us. So this whole idea that get a few percent away from our genome and then it just doesn't work is just false by our eyes, honestly.
Yes, and so it sounds like we've changed the conclusion a little bit. We started evolution can't reach beyond 1 degree, and we ended up with when you get past 98% differences, life isn't viable. That's a better kind of breakdown, I think, of a conclusion. So you're saying, here are the premises I wrote, you have a perfectly functional genome. If it mutates by 1%, conclusion, it isn't viable beyond 1%. There's a lot missing here. Where we need something to tell us why. Like, why do you believe this? Like, you've explained your beliefs
Because
but
they've done mutagenesis experiments, and these were evolutionary.
Okay.
They did mutagenesis experiments on fruit flies and a number of different nematodes and a number of different types of organisms. And this is what they discovered: is that when you mutate the genomes too much, I don't know their names, but the papers are out there. I mean, the fruit fly experiment.
I'll take, instead of names, I will take the name of the study. Even give me anything, and I will search it up right now, and we'll find it. You have anything, any kind of like keyword I can search to find any of these?
Yeah, so something that was done decades ago were the fruit fly experiment, okay, where they bombarded fruit flies. They bombarded fruit flies with radioactive energy and things like that in order to induce genetic changes, all right, in the genome. And what they found was that it produced a number of variations as expected. All of them were degenerative, and the fruit flies, first of all, never changed into anything besides fruit flies, which is what they were hoping for. Okay.
Actually, no, and I'll just stop you right there, because that tells me you don't even know what evolution is. We will never, on evolution, we will never stop being humans, no matter how much we evolve, because anything that comes after us is one of our descendants. This has always been the case for evolution. You don't change from one kind of animal to another kind. So when you say that, Anthony, you are showing you really don't know what evolution is. And if you think that's what evolution we're looking for with these fruit fly experiments, you just have not read the study. You've read somebody's propaganda about it.
And also, the fruit fly study is not valuable at all, because bombarding them with radiation to induce mutations is not the same as evolution, really, at all. But we do have proper studies. Well, it isn't. I simply disagree, good sir. We have studies, for example, on E. coli evolving brand new traits or whatever to be able to consume different substances when it couldn't previously. And the reason that the E. coli study is so valuable is because E. coli has very short life cycles, hours, I think like 12 hours or something. We can do this over the course of 30 years and watch as literal evolution takes place. So fruit fly study, not useful to us at all in any way. Do you have another study that kind of backs up? Because, bombarding with radiation is not a good way of coming to conclusions here on this subject.
Well, at that time, I think these experiments were done, and maybe even as far back as the 30s. I can't remember exactly when, but at the time, that was the best they had. And the idea was based in evolution. It was based in evolutionary theory, which is the idea that evolution is basically progressed by mutations in the genome. So scientists use whatever means they have to create mutations, as many as they can, and see what happens, see if a new lineage appears. And what they found is that just like we've always observed, they were able to create a number of different variations of fruit flies, but they weren't able to create anything beyond a fruit fly that was viable.
Right.
Here's the thing, and again, on evolution, flies will not evolve into hamsters or vice versa. That is never going to happen on evolution. You don't evolve out of your ancestry. That's the whole point, is that it's descent with modification. So we show the signs of our past ancestors, and that'll be the case no matter how many more millions of years humans get to stick around, if we're good enough to be able to be around that long. And I say if we're good enough because most species don't last millions of years. And of course, we have atomic weapons to even end that faster. And I'm hoping we're not that stupid.
Right.
But we came close a few too many times.
See, that's something I don't understand why you'd make that claim, because according to evolution, we all evolved from a single-celled organism. So we're certainly not a single-celled organism.
Here's the thing. Anymore. Guess what? We are composed of cells. Single-celled organisms are just that. It's one cell. Multi-celled organisms, lots of cells. But we did not evolve from anything that's like a modern bacteria. We have a common ancestor that was cellular.
Yeah, and the study you're referencing, I didn't actually realize this, but it was done by Thomas Hunt Morgan, and it was done to validate eugenics, actually. Thomas Hunt Morgan was, there's a big eugenics movement in the United States at the time, 20s, early 30s. It was taking hold in Germany, and I believe the dude was hired by Columbia Law School, and he realized that evolution and everything, it's just way more complicated than people expected it to be. And he said, this is like a dead end. This is just a scientific dead end. And he quit because of that. And I think Columbia continued on. But anyway, the point is that the fruit fly study is not useful for this conversation. Do you have a different study that that kind of validate?
I think it is.
This conclusion?
I think it's, well, if you look at these people who did this, they were evolutionists. They were trying to prove evolution, and I think they realized that their results weren't what they wanted. So that's why they gave up. But that's
okay, I don't know about what they were up to, or I think they were trying to validate eugenics, not evolution. Yeah. But okay,
I'm going to say, Anthony, it's really hard to impugn their character and say what you think they were doing or what they rejected when you didn't even know what decade the study was in or who ran it. I really don't like to impute motive onto people if I don't even know who they are.
Well, these are things I remember. Yeah, these are details. So it's I remembered that their explicit purpose was to prove evolution true. And they ended up realizing they couldn't do it.
Well, conversely, though, Owen had mentioned the E. coli experiment. And just to give some details there, that's particularly run by Richard Lenski at Michigan State University, my alma mater. Go green, go white. Sorry, a little bit of school pride there. But this is an experiment that's been going on, I think since at least the 90s, and basically able to show, I think you can get new generations of this E. coli in a matter of hours. And he has not just the newest strands of the E. coli that he puts in different circumstances to see how they evolve under different traits, but also has the original samples. So he can go check their DNA of the original sample and, show has all the old versions, able to test them out and say, here's all the different changes in the genome that led to the traits that they have. And of course, you have their entire ancestry. And the idea that he has found some point saying, after this point, no, the E. coli can't evolve anymore. Everything continues to evolve to try to best fit its circumstances. And this is just, one of those seminal experiments that's been going on for a long time. And honestly, I think you should know more about it because it's just so well conducted and so well documented.
I know all about Lenski. Yeah, I know that one very well. And one reason is because a lot of creationists are actually claiming victory in that one as well, because
they're liars.
Well, again, this is another individual. I don't think he stated this explicitly, but this is certainly someone. Well, yes, it was an explicit aspect of this experiment. They wanted to demonstrate evolution, and I'm sure they thought.
So he demonstrates it. That's pretty good.
Well,
it's like complaining. Galileo shows that things fall at the same rate by going to the Tower of Pisa and dropping things. That's just a backwards, non-scientific thing. It's no, he literally went to test evolutionary predictions and saw, hey, he actually came out well.
He absolutely did prove evolution with that study. And you know what? One more thing. I'm sorry. with the fruit fly thing and with this, evolution wasn't proven to be true through the fruit fly study, but that doesn't mean that it's false because the fruit fly study did not prove it to be true. If I don't find a black swan in my backyard, it doesn't mean that they don't exist. It means that I didn't find one. If I go to Australia and I find a black swan or something, that would prove that black swans are real. There's like a false negative versus a false positive type of deal.
Well,
but
yeah,
anyway.
I wasn't making the case that it disproved evolution. What I was showing is it demonstrates that as far as we know, okay, so this would be, I guess, an inductive argument, maybe.
More, of course.
Well, when you say as far as we know, I have a genetics question for you then. Are you familiar with endogenous retroviruses?
Yeah, I'm quite familiar with that argument as well.
When you say quite familiar, so tell me about what you think this is about, especially because you're saying you know this argument, not like these facts, but this argument, because this tells me that you're already coming to this in the wrong way, but go ahead.
Well, I guess the idea is that in the evolutionary history of various organisms, viruses inserted themselves into the DNA and then became a part of that genome, and then it was passed down to the various lineages, and we can kind of see the evolutionary histories based on these endogenous viral elements in the genomes of species and organisms around in the world. I think that's kind of summarized it, unless I'm wrong.
Basically, though, I believe the injections of the retrovirus DNA in the genome is mostly inactive, that it mostly doesn't do anything. It's just kind of a leftover fossil rather than actually being used by the organism for encoding proteins. At least I believe that's the general case. But that's a detail that we'll see if it matters or not. But the basic idea, yeah, somewhere in the past of a lineage, there was an injection, and the ancestors of that creature carried on that injection site, as you can see in their genome. So do you know where I'm going to be going with this kind of evidence?
Well, usually they say that there's no reason that a designer would do something like this, I guess.
Well, that has
only
nothing
be
to
evidence
do with
of evolution.
it, really. Yeah, I mean, it's not about a designer wouldn't have reason to do it. I think the point is, that is evidence that we have some connection or some relation to viruses and things, right? Because your argument is that we can't come from, or we can't be more than 98% or more than 2% different from other creatures, but we have like retrovirus DNA in us, right? So setting aside whether a creator would leave that in us, what about that? What about that argument?
Well, I think the problem is that just like, evolutionists originally claimed there were all these vestigial organs, and now we know that there are basically none. I think that originally
Sorry, you don't know what vestigial means, so stop right there. What do you think vestigial means? And if you think it means useless, I'm going to tell you you're wrong.
Well, well, that's what the 11 evolutionists used to say, is that it's an organ that was
so that's
useful.
Not what it means. Vestigial means that the feature no longer accomplishes or doesn't accomplish well its original or prior function. So the usual test case for that is the fact that that whales have hip bones, which makes sense that they used to have legs back there, and well, now they don't walk around on land anymore. So the fact that there are these hips in the shapes of hips that could hold leg points there, even though there are different muscles attached to that point, why in the world would you expect a whale to have basically hips as if it were a land creature? That's something vestigial. Not that it's useless, that it no longer fulfills a prior function in its history.
Well, again, we're going into interpretations. The supposed hip bones.
Can you say why you would find hips in a whale if that was intelligently designed?
I'm trying to explain that. They're not actually hip bones. That's something that evolutionists made up.
They just look like hip bones.
They're not hip. They don't even look like hip bones. They have a.
Have you ever looked at a whale bone?
function.
Have you looked at them? Have you looked at them?
I've seen pictures of them. Okay, I've seen pictures. I've never dissected a whale and seen their hip bone, but I've seen pictures, and even biologists will admit that these structures, which in that area of the whale, have a very specific and very important function in modern whales. The modern whales reproductive
Did I say no function, or did I say not prior function? Because I was really fucking explicit.
There's no reason to assume these structures ever did anything besides what they do now. None.
So why does it look like the whales have these dangly little legs in the back that look just like legs, that have the features of legs, that have, for example, that it has like digits, as if it had like fingers, as if it was just like a foot on a previous creature? If it's just there for attaching, but they do.
Are you kidding me? Did you just say they don't?
This is what happens when you don't actually go and look.
Are you saying that? Are you talking about external to the whale? They have little dangly leg things.
If you went and looked, you'd see that.
I mean, there might be a picture on the internet that's like photoshopped, but I don't think that actually exists as a real thing.
Everything is fake except for like
a museum and see the whale.
Nothing is real except for like what what's in your head and what you believe, and we live in the Matrix and everything, right? Nothing is believable. There's an ice wall out there preventing us from like leaving the flat Earth and everything, right? Like that's that's the direction we're going right now. You're literally not believing factual information, and because it's not useful to your argument.
I'm just saying I've never seen a whale with dangly legs. They might exist.
And you didn't look. That's why I asked if you looked, and the answer is you didn't, and that's why you don't know.
Well, I was speaking reference to the bone structure. Like, as far as I have seen whales, like I've been whale watching, and I can say I never saw the dangly leg structures. I'd be willing to be proven wrong, but I think even if I went on the internet, I probably wouldn't see anything that's meaningful, to be honest.
So you've already determined what the evidence is, even without looking at it. That is classic creationism. Oh boy.
Well, I'm just saying I don't think whales have dangly legs, little dangly leg structures.
Okay, well,
the thing is, you didn't even look. You didn't even look, and you're declaring what the evidence is, and saying that apparently evolutionists are liars and photoshopping images. Because boy, oh boy, Anthony, I don't know if you're able to see a screen right now, but Owen is screen sharing and showing a skeleton of perhaps a baleen whale. I'm not 100% sure, but showing the dangly bits there of the leg bones of a whale. Funny enough, this is actually on a creationist website.
Oh, is it really? That's funny. I'll check it. Yeah, there you go.
It's at ICR, Institute for Creation Research.
So this creationist website that I was looking at acknowledges it.
Yeah, those are the bone structures. I think we're talking about different things. Those are the internal so-called hip structure we're discussing. Those are not hips. How do you
know they're not hips if you've never even seen them before? Don't tell me you know what they are if you've never even looked. If you haven't looked, you can't say you know what they are.
And this website,
that's called lying.
I know, and the problem is the reason these aren't hips is because their function, their current function, is to support the reproductive system of whales. That's what
Anthony,
they do.
You fail to understand the whole point of vestigial organs, is that it doesn't have its prior function, but it shows the traces of that prior functionality. And I'm not saying, again, vestigial things don't have any current function. Because you will refuse to understand that, you will sit there and lie about these structures. And I'm saying you are lying about it because you are telling me what is there when you have never even looked. From your own admission, you have never even looked. You knew nothing about this, and yet you will declare that you know what they are and aren't, and that evolutionists are photoshopping these images, even though we literally just pulled them from a creationist website. My goodness, Anthony, I don't believe we can have a conversation if you are going to lie there and pretend to things you know when you haven't even looked. That's the worst form of bullshitting. I can't. Ooh, I need to calm down. Calm, zen.
No,
Let's back up. Let's back up.
All right, okay.
No, the problem is that you're lying. So let's actually try to back up. Let's go back to endogenous retroviruses.
What lie have I told? What lie have I told?
You lied that you had any knowledge about these hip bones, and you didn't even know they existed. You had never even looked at them. You knew nothing about them, and you declared that they were photoshopped.
No, the photoshopping. See, you made an argument that they had like external like leg appendages on the outside of a whale. No, that's what I was talking about. That's what I thought you were talking about. But the bones, there are bones within.
You said the only evidence you would find of what I was talking about is if an evolutionist photoshopped it.
Right.
You're the one who used the word
photoshopped. You didn't show me that. That's not what
because
you just
showed you the actual images. So you lied. You lied about what was there without even looking at it, and declared that you know better about it. So like I say, I'm going to try to put us back on a slightly different path, and let's back up a little bit. Let's go back to endogenous retroviruses because we weren't, I think, finishing that point. So the whole point with that is there is some injection at some point in the past by some sort of virus, and part of the reason we can tell that is we can go in the genome, find that sequence, and say, hey, this matches the sequence of such and such virus, and it's otherwise not doing any sort of other notable protein making function in that creature. Often you can see that there's actually some level of decay because there isn't a perfect match, because if something is not being used, it's usually not conserved in terms of evolution. So these are the sorts of things that you can tell and look for, the signs of these endogenous retrovirus injections. Is anything I'm saying right now you would object to?
Well, no, I understand this is what the scientists are claiming, but again, this is what my argument was going to be, that this is all comes down to a matter of interpretation, just like vestigial organs, because first of all, they are finding functions for these what were originally thought useless aspects of the genome, and I believe that as more research. Yeah, I believe as more research is done, we will discover that these so-called endogenous retroviruses are actually just functional pieces of DNA.
They just happen to be identical to the DNA we find in viruses?
From what I understand, and I may be incorrect about this, that claim itself is they resemble viral DNA, but it's not an exact match.
So wait, what you're saying is you can have differences between two things, and even just a little bit of difference, and it's still totally viable DNA? Well, guess what? That just threw out your previous argument about degeneracy, because now you're saying, hey, this thing just looks similar to this thing. They have completely different functions, but they still work in creatures. Oh, it looks like you can have massive changes in creatures, even with small changes to DNA. I don't see any degeneracy at this point. I think you just undid your own argument by consistency's sake.
No. I'm just, when you're looking at ERGs, the scientists overstate the similarity between these gene sequences.
When you say the scientists, name viruses. Because here's the thing: if you're going to go and start disparaging, let's start naming names. Tell me what they are saying that is false, and who is saying these false things.
Anyone, all the scientists who are talking about these ERGs.
All the scientists are liars. Yeah. So remember that, everyone.
Not all of them.
For Anthony to be right, all scientists have to be liars. No, you said all of them. Now, of course, you're a liar, so you're going to change what you say as you go along. That's fine. So.
Well, I think that they're overstating the similarity between these gene sequences and what we observe in modern viruses. They're saying that they're retroviruses.
Now, here's the thing, though. We're not even getting to the point, though, is we don't just see endogenous retroviruses in our DNA. We see the same things also in other creatures. In particular, you can go and say, hey, there are some, but not all, endogenous retrovirus injections in chimps, for example. Chimps have some that we have. Chimps have some that we don't have. We have some that chimps have. We have some that chimps don't have. And the interesting thing is, not only are the endogenous retroviruses we have in common, they're also in the same place in the genome, which is what you would expect on common ancestry.
Right. Well, so whether they're endogenous retroviruses is an open question, but there's no doubt that we share similar gene sequences with all kinds of different organisms. Like we have very similar gene sequences to fish and amphibians and all kinds of things. So I think that what that could be is that the designer has found it useful, these gene sequences. So he puts them in a human, he puts them in an ape.
So common design, common designer?
Yeah, why not?
Is that the argument? Common design, common designer?
Why not? Yes.
Yeah, I would say that makes sense.
Does that mean different design, different designer?
No, because you can have a designer design a car or a plane, you know?
So you're saying that whether they're the
because
same or different, it's the same designer no matter what. That's what we call a crappy hypothesis. If the evidence, no matter what it is, can fit, you got bad science on your side.
well,
It's
the designer
completely
could,
meaningless.
Let's put it this way.
Not really.
Are you familiar? You mentioned eyes earlier. Have you? What do you know about the eye of the human? Do you know some of its oddities?
Yeah, I know that atheists claim that it's poorly designed for various reasons, but I don't think they're.
Now,
I don't
can
think
you
that's
name
true.
some of
I
those
think
features that look unusual for a well-designed eye? Or like, what are the things that quote unquote atheists point to, as if like there's no Christians that also know about these features of the eyes?
I think that the location of the retina creates a blind spot, and atheists are saying they could make a better eye that doesn't have a blind spot or something along those lines. Is what I've heard.
It's that the basically all the nerves at the back of the eye are bunched up at the back, and so there's a spot where it's not actually photosensitive, and that's where your blind spot is.
Yeah, I don't see that. That's not a design flaw.
Then why don't octopuses have blind spots? Octopuses also have, or octopi, I'm not sure ever what the right plural is, but the octopus, octopodes is so I like sometimes, but an octopus has also a camera-like eye, but they don't have a blind spot. They don't have the same sort of structuring in that way. So not only could we design a better eye, we found it. So the question is, why did the designer give us the crappy eye? And yet somehow had a different design for the octopus.
Well, you have to. Well, here's the thing: if that eye is so superior to our eye, why didn't evolution God create it for us?
Evolution God.
Ask your God about this right now, because here's the thing: as we noted earlier, we don't evolve out of our ancestry. So your eye can't like pop out and redesign itself. That means we are kind of stuck with the dead ends along those ways, and they just get perpetuated indefinitely. The octopus had a different ancestry for how its eye developed, which is why it's different. This is actually one of the ways we can tell not only common ancestry, but where we can also see, hey, these guys didn't evolve from this other group over here, or their common ancestor has to go way further back in time. So these are the sorts of things that come along and say, hey, not only does evolution come along and produce the tree of life, but it also says why creatures over here have all these features in common, but not the features found in creatures over here, and so on. The fact that you can get that twin-nested hierarchy, which is really hard to explain on creationism, because, you know, why can't we have wings on an elephant or what have you? The creationist God could do whatever he, she, it wanted.
So you're saying that at no point along our evolutionary history could evolution God fix this problem with the eye in human type organisms?
Look, I don't know what you mean by evolution God, but we did evolve a solution to that problem, which is to say our brains kind of censor it out. So the eye was not corrected, but our brain steps in to fill in that spot.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, how come it didn't rewire things so that there isn't this problem in the first place? Evolution couldn't have found
us in effect. It's just really badly designed.
Well, if there isn't a problem, that means it's designed. The design is fine. So I don't see what
there's a blind spot, and it does affect us sometimes. Just doesn't affect us enough for it to, evolve out. Or certainly not soon.
That's what I'm
anyway.
saying, though. Why? I guess my question is, evolution is supposed to find the optimal,
It doesn't find the optimal. That's also a misconception. Evolution doesn't find the optimal. It finds the good enough. It finds the best that it can deal with under the circumstances, and good enough is usually enough to just keep going on. It's whatever a species discovers along the way, or discovers isn't quite the right word, but a trait pops up and finds that, hey, this trait makes you a little bit more likely to survive, and so that trait gets propagated. It's not that, evolution found the optimal way of doing everything. It found a way good enough so that way there can be another generation.
Yeah, Douglas Main says path of least resistance in the chat there.
Okay. So it looks like, I mean, if if biologists want to create a better eye than humans have, I'd be willing to see it.
We don't need to.
Octopus.
Okay, well, what I'm talking about, there's probably something of octopi obviously have very different body structures. So here's the thing,
Anthony, you are saying that the octopus eye has to be that way because that's what the intelligent designer had to have it that way. And guess what? That is now literally God of the gaps. The very thing that you said you were going to try to get past, but quite literally, you have no evidence, but you're saying it has to be this way because basically your theology requires it to be that way.
Well, what I'm trying to say is there might be, again, I'm not saying I'm definitely correct. I'm just saying
but
there
you have
might
no
be
evidence.
Structural
None. Zero. And when you have no evidence for something and declare that it must be, guess what? That is an act of faith. That is God of the gaps.
I'm just saying if I were to study the structure,
and I'm just saying,
the overall
you did God of the gaps, even though you said you were going to get past that. So I'm sorry, you got of the gaps just without even realizing it. And I think at this point, we're kind of at a dead end. This call has been going on a bit long, and we do need to get to other callers that are patiently waiting.
It's super
All right, thank you for taking my call.
All right.
Yeah.
Do you call in again? But boy, oh boy, we have some other biologists who would have a bit more fun as well. Good night.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Yeah, kind of going in circles. It was super interesting, I thought.
There were things that we are capturing, but I definitely get frustrated when you say, oh, this thing isn't that feature, and you've never even looked at it. You don't know the evidence. You know nothing about it, but you know it has to be Photoshopped. It's like, oof.
I know. Yeah.
It's a good thing I'm drinking water and not something stronger.
I know, right? It's like we're just, making things up now. It's just, it's insane. Fascinating, though. It's fascinating to watch the wheels turn in such an odd way sometimes.
Hey, come on, man. We gotta promote that clip we all just watched.
Well, I'd rather not shill.
Okay, well, Daddy has a $2,000 a month Red Oak habit, and you're gonna. I am your production god, and you will shill when I tell you to shill. Dance for me, baby.
Go! God damn it! Why did my life come to this? Go to patreon.com/call-the-line and donate. God damn it!
This is what happens when we let live chatters write our scripts.